What's going on, everyone? I'm coming to y'all with yet another deck tech. This time it's on my wife's Rhonas the Indomitable deck. I put this together because my wife is a big fan of green decks. She's a big fan of aggressive, Naya-style strategies. So between her Depala deck, her Hazazon Tamar deck, her Atarkal World Render deck, her Grimlock Dinobot Leader Werewolf Tribal deck, and all the other variations of red-white, red-green, and red-green-white, and so on and so forth, I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and build her mono green. I figured she would appreciate the mono green Stompy mindset, and she's been loving the deck so far. It's extremely simple to pilot, not overly powerful, about as powerful as mono green Stompy can be, so we can have some pretty good success at a more casual table. But if you're playing something along the lines of a more spiky Animar type deck, which this one here has like the Ancestral Statue combo, it is a morph deck, but it still plays like Ancestral Statue, Perforos, Hangerback Walker, those kind of cards. If you're playing against in a meta that's full of stuff like Animar, you may not want to break out a deck like Rhonas. But if you're playing in a meta that's got stuff like Grimlock and Rakdos the Showstopper, I think Rhonas is a lot better. So the other reason I chose Rhonas the Indomitable is because you just don't see him as a commander very often, and I felt that was a shame. Plus, I really wanted to have one of these invocation commanders in my arsenal, since my wife and I kind of share decks. I mean, they are her decks and my decks respectively, but we play with each other's decks a lot. What's yours is mine, you know, that whole thing. So, Rhonas is 2 and a green for a 5/5 legendary creature god with Death Touch and Indestructible. Very important for the fight effects that I neglect to put a decent package of in this deck, as I found out when sorting. And it cannot attack or block unless you control another creature with power of 4 or greater. So the deck is really wanting to get Rhonas online and start beating people's face with him. He also has the ability to pay 2 and a green, another target creature gets +2/+0, and trample until end of turn, which I don't use all that often. My wife doesn't use it all that often, but it is useful from time to time. The mana base is going to be the simplest mana base I've ever shown you guys, and that's because we kept it super simple. It's Nykthos and 34 forests. That's right, Nykthos and 34 forests. I've thought about adding Primal Order to this deck more than once to punish other people for playing, nice tuned mana bases. So that's the mana base. Into the ramp, Soul Ring, because we're playing Commander. We kind of can't play without Soul Ring. Rampant Growth, pretty standard stuff here. Cultivate. Kodama's Reach. And this is Pilgrimage, because in mono green it's actually better than Kodama's Reach and Cultivate. Sky Shroud Claim, personal favorite, brings them in untapped. Emerald Medallion reduces green spells by 1. Rhonas' Monument reduces green creature spells by 1, and says when we cast a creature spell, we can give target creature +2/+2 and trample till end of turn. Do not underestimate that, because it's how we give one of the ways we can give our commander trample. Into the Mana Dorks, because the deck wants to get Rhonas out on turn 2 if possible, so there's a lot of ways to do it. We have Birds of Paradise, Fyndhorn Elves, Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Arbor Elf, Boreal Druid, and that's all the ones that'll help us get them out on turn 2. We do run Jaruga Tree Speaker, aka Soul Green, for some additional ramp in the game. And Ulvenwald Tracker is here as a repeatable fight source for Rhonas. I'm starting to add more individual fight effects to this deck, because I find myself constantly wanting creature removal with this, as does my wife. So I need to add more of these target creature fights effects. Into the 2-drops, Sakura Tribe Elder, just a bit more ramp, green staple at this point. Priest of Titania, also for more ramp. We're not an elf deck, but we do play a healthy number of elves, and if you're at a commander table with a bunch of green players, they're probably also playing a bunch of elves, and Priest of Titania counts everybody's elves. So we're very often tapping this for, a minimum of about 3 or 4, and upwards of 8 or 9 in the game. Reclamation Sage just comes in and blows something up, kind of a green staple at this point. Dungrove Elder is a star for 2 and a green with Hexproof. It has power and toughness equal to the number of forests you control. Remember how our mana base is 34 forests? And a Nykthos? Yeah, this guy's going to get very big. I should put Song of the Dryads in this deck too, just for lulz. Eternal Witness, green staple yet again, gets us back any card from our graveyard to reuse it whenever we need to. Steel Leaf Champion is a 5/4 for 3, so it'll help enable Rhonas' ability to attack, and being unblockable by small creatures does make it pretty good against token decks. Prowling Serpopard is our protection against blue players. We want our stuff to come down and not be countered. It also is a 4-power, 3-mana creature, so Rhonas can swing when it's on board. One Vuli Beast Tracker. I actually have the cool full art one coming in the mail for this deck because I like to waste money on needless promos. It's not very much money, although. But anyways, when it ETBs, we tutor for a creature with Death Touch, Hexproof, Reach, or Trample. Reveal it, shuffle our library, and put it on top. So it helps us find a nice, fat, stompy creature for us to swing in the game at our opponent's face with. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. This is probably the best piece of ramp you can ever have in a mono-green stompy type deck, in a big green deck. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. So whenever someone plays a fatty, if it's fatter than everyone else's fatty, they draw a card. And usually the fatty that's coming into play is our fatty, so we draw cards. But we can also pay a green and tap to add X mana and any combination of colors to our mana pool, green, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. The least I've ever tapped this for is 5. The most I've ever tapped this for is 16. It can get pretty nuts. Nissa, Vastwood Seer, just some mana fixing, comes in, finds us a forest, and its flip side can ramp us a little bit or get us a token that allows Rhonas to swing. Karametra's Acolyte is another great piece of mana ramp, kind of a budget Selvala for a lot of players. Tap, add amount of green to your mana pool equal to your devotion to green, which, if you're not familiar, is every green pip in the text box, or in the casting cost, rather, of all of our permanents. So, if we have 4 green pips on the board, this will tap to add 4 green to the mana pool. So, pretty good amount of ramp out of this. Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsizma. This guy is awesome, a very powerful mono-green general in his own right, reducing our fatties by 2 to cast, and whenever he attacks, each other creature with power 4 or greater gets 1/1 and trample until end of turn. So it's another way to give our general some trample. Beast Whisperer is some much-needed card draw for this deck. So we want to play a bunch of creatures and swing with them, and Beast Whisperer lets us draw more cards when we play creatures to hopefully slam more creatures. Champion of Rhonas. Can't play a Rhonas deck without playing Champion of Rhonas. Just seems wrong. And whenever it attacks, we can exert it to put a fatty from our hand onto the battlefield. I like it. It's a more aggressive Elvish Piper. And way more flavorful for this deck. Yeva, Nature's Herald, allows us to cast our green creatures as though they had flash, and she herself has flash. Sirach, the Hunt Caller, is one of the best creatures in the entire deck, believe it or not, because if we ramp out Rhonas by turn 2 with a Mana Dork, we can slam Sirach turn 3 and hit in for 10 damage on turn 3, because Sirach will choose to give himself haste with his Formidable ability. And between him and Rhonas, you have 10 power on the board. Pretty solid in this deck. Again, it's a simple card, but the haste is nice, and I oftentimes just use that haste to give a Mana Dork like Priest of Titania or Karametra's Acolyte that just came into play some haste, so they can tap for a bunch of mana to play a bunch more spells. Pelucranos, the World Eater, for no other reason than I like it. It doesn't see enough play in Commander. I think it's a cool card, and I wanted to have it see play. So, yeah, that's why it's here. Nylea, God of the Hunt, another awesome mono-green stompy general in her own right. I do not prefer her over Rhonas, unlike the majority of Commander players, it would seem, because she's actually harder to enable than Rhonas is. I can get Rhonas turned on consistently on turn 4, very commonly on turn 3. Nylea, usually I found that it takes about turn 4, turn 5 before she'll really be able to attack, even in a ramp-heavy green deck. Still an awesome card, though. I mean, she gives all of our creatures trample, which is what we want her for, and she can pay 4 mana to pump a creature 2/2 until end of turn. Grothama, All-Devouring, is in here for card draw, believe it or not. He is a 10/8 for 5, seems good, and whenever a creature attacks, we may its controller may have it fight Grothama, and whenever Rhonas attacks, because he has Death Touch and Indestructible, he will fight the Grothama and live, kill the Grothama, and then we're going to draw 5 cards from Grothama's ability. I've also used this with stuff like Galta to draw 12 cards, and my wife's even once used it with Impervious Great Worm to draw 16, which is insane. Gigantosaurus, it is a very simple 10/10 for 5 green. That 5 green is actually really nice because we don't really have colorless mana in the deck, aside from the Boreal Druid and the Soul Ring, so we can always afford to cast this, and it ramps up our devotion for Nykthos and Karametra's Acolyte quite a bit, as does Primal Crux, which is a star for 6 green mana, trample, and it has chroma, so its power and toughness are equal to the number of green mana symbols among permanents we control. So basically its power and toughness are equal to our devotion to green, which is huge. At minimum, it's a 6/6 trample. More often than not, it's like a 15/15, 16/16 trample. Uvenwald Hydra is a star for 6 with reach. It has power and toughness equal to the number of lands we control, which is usually a lot. And when it ETBs, we can search for a land and put it into play tapped. More often than not, this goes and grabs Nykthos. Bane of Progress, we don't run a ton of artifacts and enchantments, so it's a great way to wipe the board of them and leave ourselves with a nice, big, fat creature. Rampaging Baloths is a 6/6 for 6 with trample, and a landfall to make 4/4s. What's not to love in a simple mono-green deck? Thunderfoot Baloth is a 5/5 for 6 with trample, and Lieutenant, so as long as we control our commander, and we practically always will since board wipes, or at least most of them, don't touch him. But as long as we control our commander, it and other creatures we control get +2/+2 and trample. So, yeah, it's actually a 7/7 trample for 6 whenever Rhonas is on board. That pumps our other team 2/2 in trample. Seems pretty good. Yet another way to give our board trample. Speaking of ways to give our board trample, we have Kamal, Fist of Kroja. It is a 4/3 for 6, not a very good rate. It has a pretty cute ability where we can turn lands into 1/1 creatures, which can be really mean if an opponent goes to Wrath of God. We can say, okay, spend all of our green, turn all of their land into creatures, and they'll wipe their own creatures off the board, which is freaking hilarious. But he's mostly in here for the ability to pay 2 and 3 green to overrun, so 3/3 and trample. Activate that a bunch of times, swinging for the kill. Pretty effective. Soul of the Harvest. Pretty straightforward. 6/6 for 6, trample. And whenever another non-token creature ETBs under our control, we may draw a card. Avatar of Growth is a card I was super excited to see out of the Game Night set and really wanted to play, and I figured we're better than Rhonas. A 4/4 for 6 with trample that costs 1 less for each opponent we have, so realistically it's going to cost 3 less all of the time. So it's going to be a 4/4 for 1 and 2 green with trample, and when it ETBs, each player searches their library for up to 2 basic lands and puts them onto the battlefield, untapped by the way, and then shuffles their library. So when you look at it that way, he's basically a 4/4 for 1 with trample. Seems pretty solid. Yes, we're helping our opponents. We don't really care. If we're trying to ramp our fatties out, this guy does a good job of it. And also, interesting note, it does not say each player may search their library. So if an opponent like Personal Tutored or something, like Imperial Seal, one of the slower tutors, we effectively made them waste that, which is kind of funny. Rampaging Brontodon came out of the gift pack, and it's a pretty straightforward and simple card, but very effective. 7/7 for 7, trample, and when it attacks, it gets 1/1 until end of turn for each land we control. So it is just a fat swinger. Regal Force. We are not a token deck, but we are a mono-green deck with a lot of ramp, and we oftentimes have a lot of creatures on board. So even if Regal Force just comes down and draws us 5 or 6 cards, that's still 7 mana, draw 5 or 6 with that has a 5/5 attached to it. Definitely still worth playing, even when not in a token deck. Rooks Sword. We actually choose to run this over the Vizier, mostly because we just like having the 7/7 trample. The Vizier, Vizier of the Menagerie is probably the better choice in the deck, but I don't know, Rooks Sword is a classic, and it's nice to have some old cards see some play. Terracodon is nobody's favorite elephant, coming down and blowing up things and giving whatever he blew up, or the controller of whatever he blew up, that many elephants. So, lands, artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, whatever. Blow up non-creature permanents, give them 3/3s. We are left with a 9/9. I feel like we're doing okay. And finally, we have... Oh, not finally, there's one more after this guy. We have Impervious Great Worm, a 16/16 for 10 with Convoke and Indestructible. Yeah, he's a little slow, but he's definitely fat, and I really wanted a home to put him in, so Rhonas seemed like the best place for it, and whenever he does come out, he usually is pretty nuts, especially if we give him trample. Here's the last creature of the deck, and it's Ghalta Primal Hunger, a 12/12 for 12 that costs X less, where X is the total power of our creatures, so it's basically a 12/12 for 2 that has trample itself. Nice, simple, fat, efficient. Into the rest of the deck, we have a couple of tutors, not very many. We have Green Sun Zenith, go find a fatty, throw him into play. Time of Need, go find a legendary creature and put it into our hand, which is most of our important stuff. Find Ghalta, find Goreclaw, find Impervious Great Worm if we need card draw. Very underplayed tutor. No Worldly Tutor in the deck yet. We've thought about it, we just don't really know if we need it. Adventurous Impulse, Green Ponder, pretty sweet. Look through the top 3, find a creature or land, put it into our hand, put the rest on the bottom in any order. Elemental Bond draws us cards when creatures with power 3 or greater ETB under our control. Colossal Majesty draws us cards during our upkeep if we have a creature power 4 or greater. Harmonize is just a green staple at this point because we want the card draw. Rishkar's Expertise is the best piece of card draw in the format right now, not counting stuff like Necropotence and Ad Nauseam from the EDH guys. But that being said, it is just so great. Being able to draw 6, 7, even 12 cards for 6 mana and then cast a 5-drop for free is nuts. This is a must-play in any deck with big creatures. Zendikar Resurgent, way to double our mana and also get some card draw. I mean, we want the card draw. Some removal. Berserk doesn't look like removal, but it is. Because if we want to use it on our opponent's creature, we'll give it Exo and Trample, and then it'll die at the next end step. If we use it on our commander, he has Indestructible, so he lives anyways, and we just hit somebody for twice as much commander damage. So it's a win-win. Prey Upon, the only other fight effect I currently have in the deck. I really do need to add more. Reads 1 mana, kill a creature, basically, with Rhonas. Corrosion Grip, split second, blow up an artifact or enchantment. Really powerful to get rid of certain problematic cards, and most commonly used to blow up Soul Ring, even after all these years. I'm joking. It's actually most commonly used for Sensei's Divining Top. I just misspoke there. And I'm trying to play it off like I said what I meant to say. Beast Within, yet again, green staple, just blow up any permanent and give their controller a 3/3 Beast. Bramble Crush doesn't see a lot of play in the format, but I really wanted more removal in the deck, and 4 mana to hit any non-creature permanent seemed like an okay rate with the amount of ramp we had. I used to have Desert Twister in this deck too, but I actually cut it. It was still a little too much even for this. And the final card is Wave of Vitriol. We don't have a lot of artifacts, we don't have a lot of enchantments, and we have a single non-basic land, so Wave never hits us like it hits everybody else. This usually blows everybody else out of the water, breaks their back, and we're left just fine. If we lose a cost reducer by the time we got to 7 mana, it doesn't really matter. We lose a Soul Ring, it doesn't really matter. So that is the simplest deck you've probably seen all week. Rhonas the Indomitable, Mono Green Stompy. If you liked this deck tech, let me know in the comments down below if you want to see more of the decks in our collection. We got plenty to choose from, and I would love to go ahead and do some videos on them if you'd like. Stuff like Tygem, Sidisi's Hand Control, and Fire Song and Sunspeaker, Rakdos the Showstopper, Grimlock Dinobot Leader, my much beloved Endrixar Master Breeder deck. There's a lot that I could cover. If you guys want to see it, just let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to get a video out there for you soon. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and I'll see you later.